how your friend has been so far.
It's been good. It's been a lot of work. I keep sort of my mantra is like it's a marathon, not a sprint. Uh, but the audiences that we've had in, I think, have really responded to the show, which has been great. And we've had a lot of people coming up to us afterwards and having a very emotional response to the show, which has been really lovely to see and kind of connect with people over.
Remind me about the show itself. Obviously, you've told me about it on the radio, but this is slightly different. But just give us a brief outline on what the show's about.
Yeah, so it's called The Strongest Girl in the World. It's a one woman show that's autobiographical, and it's about my experience of losing my father at the age of 10, and about childhood grief in general, and how when we lose people at a young age, we rely on the stories that other people tell us to build this picture of who they were and to build our own relationship with them. So I share those stories throughout the show, and some of them are quite funny, some of them are more somber. And in general, it's about how grief that's experienced in childhood kind of changes over time and changes us over time. Um, but it's not as bleak as that makes it sound. It's also quite funny and uplifting, and we've got a lot of like campfire songs throughout it, which is really lovely.
Oh, that's right, because you do the musical side of it as well, don't you?
Yeah.
Um, Grief is a really, it's almost like a subject that people don't want to talk about, but every single human on this planet will go through it at some point. Um, how important then is it for you to kind of get that message out there for people like saying like grieving is okay no matter how you do it?
Yeah. So, my director Ellie and I, when we've talked about this show, our sort of mission statement with it is to take grief from a private act to a communal one. I think we're living in a time when I think we kind of shame people out of sharing those feelings. The phrase like trauma dump is something that people say a lot. And while I understand what it means, I also think it makes people feel uncomfortable being honest about what they're going through. And we're trying to sort of model a world that we would like to live in, where people are more honest and upfront about what they're feeling and give other people permission to feel the same feelings and to see that other people may experience the very specific things that you also experience. The show is quite specific. It's about me, and there are a lot of really specific stories and details in there. But I think, sort of ironically, in being more specific, it's become more universal because there's so many things for people to latch on to. We had a whole family in a few shows ago who were hysterically laughing at a certain point in the show because it's the story about terrible time I had surfing, and I guess their mother had been through a very similar thing, and they were all laughing about it. So it's great to sort of see those moments where people connect to the show.
So what happens then when something like that happens? Do you kind of latch onto that? Like something like if you see somebody like really connecting, you kind of latch onto that, or is it still kind of the creative process of just kind of sticking to your script, so to speak? But I know it's not a fully scripted thing.
Yeah. So because it's not stand-up comedy, we don't have like crowd work, as it were. But
You can't ignore
of course,
reaction, you know.
on the show, it's a lot of me looking directly at the audience. It's a small space, and I view it kind of as a conversation of sorts. And so the energy that the audience gives is kind of the energy that I reflect back to them, which has meant that we've done the exact same show many times now and had it the it's been a completely different show every time because yesterday we had a group in who were really laughing a lot at the comedic bits, and it felt a lot more light. Like the show itself felt a lot more light. And then we've had other shows where we've had a lot of people in the room who have been through a very similar experience to me, and it's been more somber. But I think both are just like different kinds of audiences reacting in the way that the show hits them.
So here's the thing: I've got a very specific memory for you here, but I remember, um, I think maybe about 10 years ago, my family went through a a stage of life where we lost a lot of people really quickly. We were within like 3 years. It was like it was a lot, and so I got very used to grieving, if that makes
Mhm.
any sense. Plus, I played the piano in the local church, and I get invited to funerals all the time, so I knew how to kind of switch it off.
Yeah.
So, um, when my uncle passed, one of my cousins were. I remember them sitting on the steps outside the house, and they were so upset because everybody was in the house and they were laughing and they were telling stories and they were making jokes and his perception of grief was exactly that. I need to be sad here.
Yeah.
And is that what you're trying to kind of do as well? Or kind of get rid of that stigma, I guess, around grief in a way?
Yeah. Actually, so we brought a work in progress version of the show to the Fringe in 2023.
Mhm.
And it's changed a lot since then. And one of the major things that has changed is from watching other shows that were kind of dark comedies. We learned that when you're talking about a serious topic, you have to invite people to laugh from the
Yeah.
very beginning. So we moved a lot of the comedic bits to the very beginning of the play to say, it's okay. Like we can all take a breath. We don't have to panic. We're going to laugh through this. We're going to cry through this. And we're all going to come out on the other side. Okay, and having had a cathartic experience. Like I say, one of the very first lines of the play is, my name is Julie Suskind Weiss. When I was 10 years old, my father died of stage 4 kidney cancer. I'm 28 now, and I'm okay, mostly, which is kind of encompassing what we want people to hold with them through the rest of that journey.
Right, yeah. Because have you ever seen the musical, the producers?
I'm familiar with it,
Yeah.
but I haven't really seen the
So,
whole thing.
and it's funny that this story's come up quite a few times now in talking to different acts, but there was a situation where Nathan Lane was playing a certain part in the producers. Producers is a very funny show, right?
Yeah.
But it's very, very close to the bone in terms of race and other different things. And he was having this night where the audience just weren't laughing at all. And what he decided to do was completely improvised. Now, the staging is an office in New York, and he opened up these balcony doors and jumped off the balcony, completely improvised. And then went round backstage, he came back on stage, and that one act just relaxed the audience enough to give them permission to laugh at everything else.
Yeah.
And it seems to be a really common thread this year, anyway, that is it's important to make sure that your audience know it's okay to laugh at this stuff.
Yeah. And I think it's an autobiographical story, but I was sort of talking to my director the other day about the fact that I'm playing myself, but I'm playing a character of my younger self. And the sort of like the sort of degrees of separation that I have from the person I was when it happened,
Mhm.
I hope will allow the audience to lean in a bit because I don't want them to feel that they have to worry about me. Like we're going to make it through this and like you can see me now
Yeah.
and I'm okay. It's actually been an interesting experience on my first performance of the show. Um, I left the theater with a text from my mom that said, please call me. And I know my mom. I was like, something bad has happened. And my dad's dad actually passed on the very first performance of the show at the Fringe. And that has been a different experience because I'm working through that in real time. Like this show has always been a show about a grief that I experienced when I first started writing it, 12 years ago, now 18 years ago. But this is something that I'm going through in real time, and it's like really changed the whole process for me.
Has the show changed at all? Like anything inside the show that's changed throughout your this kind of process that you go through?
The text hasn't changed yet. I imagine if I did it again, maybe it would. I don't think I have enough perspective on it yet but I think it's changed my performance and my approach to the performance. Um, I think, it's a play about grief, which is really so much about memory and how we keep people's memories alive. And it's made the importance of the show. So it sort of underlined it even more because this link to my dad has gone and it feels even more important that I keep these stories alive. And I hope that it'll like encourage other people to have these same conversations. Again, both both with sadness, but also with joy that, these people lived a full life and they had a lot of stories that they could share that cover the whole spectrum of human emotion.
Tell me, tell me about your dad. Like how, like from your memories of him, like what was it like? What like that sort of. And the reason I'm so keen to know about that, I'm a dad. I've got three little girls. I understand the relationship of dad and daughter,
Yeah.
and to kind of have that they're taken away so early, it must be rough. But we'll get to that. But I just want to know about the man himself.
Um, my dad was like a larger than life presence. He was also a huge man. He was like 6'2" and like 300 pounds. So
Can I can I, can I throw typical American in there? Is that something that we can?
he was like a linebacker. Like he just had a huge presence and he was incredibly bubbly and like such a jokester. Um, and he came from a big family. He was the oldest of 4 kids. So he always, I think, had a kind of something parental about him because he was kind of raising his siblings too. Um, and he was just always the person who was like cracking jokes. He was also a very part of the reason that I incorporated so much music in the show is because my dad was a very musical person. One of the things that I've inherited from him is my voice. So it feels really fitting to have so much of that worked into the show as well. He was like the person at the office Christmas party who was the first to get up to the karaoke machine and sing um to my horror as a child, Bootylicious by Destiny's Child.
Love it.
That was the kind of person that he was.
It's almost like em- embarrassing your child, but also creating a memory in there at the
Yeah.
same time. That's what I try and do. Like genuinely, like anytime I try and do stuff in front of my kids, it's always a bit embarrassing for them at the time. But then maybe we're, a few years later, like, oh God, do you remember that time that you did
Yeah.
this thing? I was like, okay, we're sorted. We've got it. We've got it good. So there's something really familiar about this. Certainly going on in my own life. My wife lost her dad about 5 years ago. Um, to cancer as well. And she is, well, when he died, she was in her mid-30s. So, whilst it is a little bit different, at the end of the day, she still lost the man of her life. You know what I mean? That's what it is. And I do see a lot of that kind of childlike grief coming out in her every so often. It's been 5 years and you still see it and she still hurts every single day. Right. Um, 18 years on, how are you How are you with it all now?
Um, I think a big part of this process for me has been not just about processing grief, but about reconnecting with the childhood, my childhood self who existed before this happened. I have summer camp songs that are established summer camp songs in the show. I also have a few songs that I wrote, and one of them has a line that says the days before we knew that there were things to be afraid of. And it's about this experience of childhood when there's a period in your life when you don't really realize that bad things can happen to you. And there's a freedom that comes with that. And I used to sort of talk about and think about my younger self as a person completely separate to me. Because I almost had no ability to remember what it was like to be her.
Mhm.
And in doing the show and in embodying my younger self, um, I'm finding my way back into that, even in a world where I'm very aware of all the bad things that can happen, but almost finding a freedom in that knowledge that you can't control things.
Yeah.
And there's a fear in that, but there's also a real freedom in that. I say at the end of the show, I'm getting braver again. It's about like returning to this bravery that I had as a young person.
Do you think then that kind of bravery that you were talking about is allowing you to feel that again? Because now I am going to go. I'm right in. I'm going to be completely call it psychologist mode here, even though I get zero qualifications. But yeah, but I mean, like you're saying there, like it's allowing you to feel that and like be brave again. And when you're 10 years old, there is a bit of distance between you and the reality of what's going on.
Yeah.
Um, now 18 years, the lines that you said there, um is that something that you feel that you can explore again? Like that kind of that pain, I guess it's pain, but when you're 10 years old, it's not like you understand what I mean? I'm trying my best to kind of vocalize what I'm saying here, and I'm not doing a good job. Um, right, so I always take things back into my own personal. So I lost all my grandparents and stuff when I was about 10, which I understand is not the same as losing a parent. I haven't lost a parent,
Yeah,
so I
but
don't
loss
know.
is loss.
Yeah, and it hurts a lot more now as an adult than it did as a child because one minute your granny's there, the next minute she's not. You say goodbye to funeral, and that's how life moves on. Um, but being an adult now, looking back on that, um, are you kind of allowing yourself to kind of feel that childlike, dreamlike fairy tale kind of focus? I don't know what I know what I'm trying to say. It's ADHD is just not coming out. Hopefully, you can translate what I was trying to get out there.
Well, um, part of the reason that I was interested in writing about sort of childhood grief is because it changes as you get older because you change. And that's true of everyone, but particularly when you're at a developmental age where you can't really understand loss fully, then you're always grieving because you're grieving at like you're grieving the new person you're becoming that they didn't know.
Yeah.
And there is a different sense of that when you're 10. And I think inside of the show, I'm feeling, I think when I was 10, I really felt grief for not having two parents. And the older I get, I feel grief for the specific loss of him.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you.
Because I think there are so many ways in which kids, we don't, and I hope that people are better about it now. But there are so many things that we speak to kids assuming that they have two parents.
Yeah.
And I think that was something I really resented growing up, and I had a hard time with that. And now, knowing many more people my age who have experienced loss, it's less that, and it's more the individual person and the individual relationships that you've lost.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
So I don't really know what my question was. It was it was coming out my mouth, but it was kind of floating away back that way. I don't know where it was going. Um, you talk about resentment there, right? Do you do you resent not having that teenage girl dad relationship? At any point do you feel that you missed out on those sort of things? I'm talking about the really sort of, oh, I hate you, dad. Slice the door. Don't you tell me you're under my roof, not under your all that sort of stuff. You kind of feel that you missed out on that sort of stuff, or did your mum kind of take over from that side?
Um, yes and no. I think when I was going through it, one of the things about losing someone so young is that you don't have the opportunity to envision what your life is going to be like in different scenarios with them. So, people often assume, for example, that like my sister got married last year, and people assumed that the wedding was going to be this thing that my dad wasn't going to walk her down the aisle and it was going to be really hard. I think it was hard for my mom, but for my sister and I, we have lived more of our lives without my dad than with him. So we haven't had the opportunity to envision a wedding where we were going to have a father-daughter dance or a graduation where he was going to be there. So it's more unexpected ways that it comes out. It's more like now, it's not the wedding, it's having a life partner that he won't have met.
Right. Yeah.
Um that is like the harder part that I wouldn't have necessarily been able to anticipate. Um yeah.
So it's kind of difficult to kind of try and empathize because I feel like I've still got like both my parents, and you'd mentioned earlier about that kind of young invincibility that you feel like, oh, nothing bad's ever going to happen to me, and I still feel that I'm 41 years old, right? And I still feel that to this day. I am adamant my parents are going to outlive me. And that kind of way, I am petrified of the day that it comes. And that's another thing as well, that um, by bringing your show out to the world can kind of show even like proper adults, kind of. I've got a purple beard, I'm not a proper adult, but um, to show us that it'll be okay. And I think is that important to you to kind of get that out there as well?
Yeah, I think so. And that, uh, I say at the end of the play, I just keep spoiling the ending, and it's not really it's not sort of a big reveal type of show.
And then there's fireworks.
That I say, it's been 18 years since my father died, and people care less than they used to. At first, they tiptoe around you, call you just to check in, keep their everyday problems to themselves because how could they compare? But eventually, their lives go back to normal, and yours does too, at least a new version of it. And in time, you feel less naked, less vulnerable, and a bit less special too. And it's about this, you do, you're never over it, but you get used to the new reality that you're living in. And that becomes like you have a day when it's not the first thing that you think about in the morning. And in time, that sort of grows and follows. And then you do get to the place that I'm at now, where I can tell happy stories about my dad and really just feel happy that I get to tell them, that I experienced them in the first place. And I can also look at some of the, you know, faux pas of a world not being able to talk about grief properly and laugh at them. Like I talk about there's a moment at the top of the show where I'm talking about all the deeply insane things that people have said to me since I lost my dad. And at this point, they honestly make me laugh. Like
Right.
I had a nurse in a doctor's office, like she was reading through my chart sort of absent-mindedly and quickly. And she got to the information about my parents and very quickly blurted out, "Is your dad still dead?" And after she said it, she was like, she knew immediately what she had done. And we both like couldn't stop laughing because it was funny. Like,
Yeah.
I think you get to a place where it's not like you're not offended by things like that. It honestly just makes you laugh.
One thing that always gets me, and I remember one specific time where I was out with my gran, and she'd bumped into somebody, and it's been about 2 years since my granddad passed, and she bumped into somebody, and she said, "Oh, so how's Bill, her husband?" And she was like, "He died." See that feeling of like wanting the world to just swallow you whole. I couldn't. I really could. I think I would run away.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would run. Um, but I think that's my attitude towards grief. I mean, there was another time where my uncle had passed, and I avoided seeing my aunt for about 6 months because I didn't want to see her cry. That was it. I was a child. I didn't want to see an adult cry. Grown ups don't cry. Um, and the so I avoided all that, and then hearing your show and hearing the way you're putting all this together and what you're putting out there kind of gives me permission to kind of like that's okay to do that and kind of hide a bit, but also if it happens now as an adult, I'll be thinking about your show, and I'll be thinking, you know what? Everybody's dealing with this different. If I go in there, I'm naturally a talkative person. I try and make like sometimes inappropriate jokes, but that's how I deal with it. And you personally and the work that you're doing is giving me permission to do that, and I love that. Um, and that's my personal feedback. But in terms of the feedback that you've gotten from your audiences so far, well, how has it been found?
I guess unsurprisingly, the feedback that has meant the most to me is to speak to other people who lost a parent at a young age or lost an immediate, very important family member at a young age. Because it's important to me that they feel like seen in what I'm doing. And we did a preview run off Broadway in New York. And there was a woman who was there who had lost her mother at a young age. And she said, she felt like in her body what it felt like to be in that moment. Like she was transported back to this time in her life. And that might sound like, gosh, why would I want to do that? But I do think it's cathartic in some way to sort of, we bottle so much up, and to have like a designated hour where we're going to talk through it all and feel all the emotions and then kind of like leave it on the court, so to speak, is a really, I have found actually like a really healthy way to move through the. Um, and I do think like what you're saying about talking to people, I honestly think the worst, the only thing you can do wrong is to not acknowledge it at all. Like I think people just want to know that you remember that it happened. And then everything from there on out, it's like, people on the spectrum often say, like, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. If you've met one person who's grieving, you've met one person who's grieving. Like, everyone, like you said, like your cousins didn't want to joke about it. I love when people make jokes about it because it makes me feel like I don't have to carry the burden of making you uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Like, the worst is when someone feels uncomfortable when they learn about it, and then you feel like you have to comfort them, and you're like, I lost a parent. Why am I comforting you?
Yeah.
And just having like an awareness that different people want to talk about it differently, but that everyone has I think, pretty universal feeling of wanting to acknowledge that it happened is really the important thing.
There's something very grown up about that and the way that you put that together. Do you feel like at 10 years old that you were maybe you had to grow up a wee bit and be a bit more mature about these things? Like with looking back, do you feel that you had to do that and we lost a wee bit of your childhood from that?
Yeah, so that's like a big thing that I talk about in the show. I say like I think of my life in two parts, with dad and without dad, childhood and adulthood. Um
So that line between childhood and adulthood, are you talking that?
yeah, I think because it does it robs you of your innocence immediately. And it also gives you a different role in your family. Like I think my mom was absolutely great in the wake of all of this, and this isn't a criticism of her at all.
Mhm.
But you take on a different role in your family when there's one parent. There is a different kind of responsibility. And now, as an adult, I have a really different relationship with my mom than my friends who have two parents, because I'm her kid, but I'm also her partner in a lot of ways.
I love that.
And I think that can be, there are moments where I've resented that in my life. Um, and then there are moments where you say, like, in the same way that part of the reason that I love being a playwright is because every single time I sit down to write a play, I think, I don't know how to write a play. And then I do it. And then there's something really amazing about just the knowledge that you wrote 2 hours worth of content. It can be total shit. Am I allowed to curse?
Yeah.
Okay. It can be total shit.
Fucking shit. Go for it. Just throw all the ones out there.
But just doing it is kind of like invigorating and proving yourself wrong. And there's something about like being forced into adulthood that absolutely sucks, but also like you can get through things because you have a proven track record of having survived every bad thing you've been through so far.
Well, that's it. That I think there's the old saying that like you have literally survived every bad day, and you are standing right here, and it's a testament to you as well. How is your relationship with your mum now? I know you said it can be a bit different at times, but are you still very close?
Yeah. It's me, my mom, and my sister. We're like the Gilmore Girls for anyone who's.
That was literally on the edge of my tongue.
It's a very Gilmore Girls type of
Say
situation.
is that Gilmore Girls type situation?
Yeah, we're us and our little dog. We got a female dog too. We are only girls in our house. And yeah, we're like incredibly close. I think we would have been anyway, but this experience obviously like bonds people in a different sort of
I
way.
can imagine.
And they're for every day since I've been here. My show ends at 3:20. At 3:25, I have a text waiting for me from both of them. How did it go? And my mom is coming at the end of this. My mom has seen the show more than any other person other than my director. And that was actually the hardest. Like the first performance doing the show to strangers is no big thing. I don't care if I cry in front of strangers, if they think I'm weird, whatever. Doing it, there was a show when I did it in 2023. There was one show where my mom, my sister, my aunt and uncle, who were like very featured in the play. Um, my best friend, who was my sister's best friend, who was at camp with us when my dad died. My cousin, my camp counselor, who was our counselor when my dad died, which is why the show has so much camp in it. Like that was the most nervous I've ever been to do a performance because I'm playing the part of people in the room, which is just like a really crazy feeling. But now that I've done it for them a few times, like I think that also has been a kind of freeing experience. And for some of my family members has like not so much for my immediate family because we're, you know, no topic is off limits with us, but like with some of my extended family, I think it's actually opened conversations about this that they maybe were scared to have or hadn't really brought up with me
Oh
before.
yeah. And how is everybody now? I know what like they always say that like grief and time kind of make life better. But how is everybody now? Like in terms of everything, just life? Is everybody just getting on?
Yeah, I think like anybody, it depends on the day. Like there are good days and there are bad days. Um, I think experiencing other friends losing parents, I've actually like my closest friend group from university have been very unlucky in the parent department. We've all lost one or two parents in the past. Obviously, mine happened a long time ago, and then a few of my friends lost parents in rapid succession very recently. And that has been a new experience of like working through what it's like to support someone. I've not been on this side
Yeah.
of the interaction before. Um, and so you always have like different things that you're working through. But I think we're all mostly doing okay.
There was a phrase that you used earlier on when we first started talking, and it was about everything just gets a bit easier and a bit, and then you said like you become less special. What did you mean by that? Like, what's. Yeah, I'll leave you with that. But what do you mean by that?
I think when you go through a trauma like that at a young age, um, I was one of the only people I knew at 10 who had lost a parent.
Right.
Uh, and that was very isolating, but it also garnered a kind of attention from adults, an awareness that maybe I needed a bit more support than other kids. And as you get older, it's not the first thing that you think about yourself. It's also about the first thing that other people think about you,
Yeah.
which is in so many more ways freeing. But there is a small part of you that loses that extra support that you had at the time. And while the grief has gotten easier, it's still there. And I think I hope that people coming away from the show might be encouraged to like sort of continue like offer continued support to people who've been through that. That it's not the kind of thing that you give it a year or 2 years and then you move on from it because the person who's experiencing it never fully moves on from it.
So you're here. You're here for the whole run.
Yes.
You're here for the whole time. So same as what we did on the radio here. Oh, hello. Must be that time.
Yeah.
That's it. Time to go home. Same as what we did in the radio. Just at the end of the thing, just where it is, when it is, how people can get tickets, and whatnot, and just kind of the rest of your run. Go for it.
Yeah. So it's The Strongest Girl in the World. We're on at 2:20 p.m. from now until the end of the Fringe. We've got days off on the 12th and the 19th of August. Um, Gilded Balloon Powder House. Did I say that? And that's it.
Awesome, awesome. Actually, just one more thing I want to just jump on. I know they're starting to play music here. They're telling me like, here we go. But it's all right. These will pick it up. The title of the show, Strongest Girl in the World. As I said, my wife lost her dad a few years ago, and I use that phrase a lot with her. Is that something that you heard a lot when you were younger, or what? Why did you choose that title?
So the title is from a reference to a series of books called The Adventures of Pippi Longstocking.
Okay.
Um, who is this storybook character that I read growing up, um, who has lost both of her parents. She's 9 and she's lost both of her parents. And she's this like larger than life, um, like super strong, super funny, bubbly, crazy personality. And I think she represents the sort of, I mean, this is going to sound very sappy, but she represents the inner child that, in some ways I convinced myself that that part of myself had died. And now I'm coming back to the realization that she is still in there somewhere. And I think Pippi Longstocking is sort of the permission I need to, going through loss doesn't mean you can't still be the strongest girl in the world.
Love it. And that's actually a perfect way to end it there. But thank you so much for taking the time again
Thanks for having
to
me.
chat to me. It's been lovely. Hopefully, other people can take from that, from certainly from what you've given me.